Welcome to today's Hemp Barons podcast, everyone. I'm host Joy Beckerman, and we have a great show for you today. I do want to take a moment to address what's happening around the country right now and in other parts of the world. As we know, on May 25th, George Floyd, an African-American man, was killed in Minneapolis. He was handcuffed, and while lying face down, Derek Chauvin, a white police officer, knelt on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And according to the criminal complaint that was filed against Chauvin, that was 2 minutes and 53 seconds after Floyd was unresponsive. This happened, of course, while 3 other officers who participated in Floyd's arrest were standing by. One was holding his back while this murder was taking place, the other holding his legs. And the 3rd officer stood nearby, keeping citizens from preventing Floyd's death as they literally shouted, "You're killing him." Now, as of the taping of this weekly address, thus far, due to massive public outcry, authorities finally arrested Chauvin on May 29th, Friday, and charged him with 3rd-degree murder. But despite ongoing and growing public outcry, the other 3 officers have still not been arrested or charged, and I hope by the airing of this show, that news will have changed. There have been peaceful protests across the nation that have been infiltrated by a variety of interests, and they've caused property damage, theft, fires, injury to others, both innocent citizens and police officers. Those invaders range from white supremacists to anarchists to, according to some reports, the police themselves, because riots give rise to the potential use of force. Now, sitting down en masse in the middle of a city street is an outstanding and nonviolent way to protest. It shuts down traffic and commerce. It forces governments to respond. And the organizers of peaceful, permitted protests taking place all over are aware of all of those nonviolent methods. Protesters are not rioters. Both of these things are taking place, and we need to know the difference and understand the dynamics of what's happening. But the bottom line is, it's not enough to be non-racist. We have to be vocally anti-racist. It's our responsibility to use our power to engage in the process and for the love of all that is good and right in this world. It is our responsibility for those of us who are white to use our white privilege with all of our might to speak up for what is good and just and compassionate in our neighborhoods, in the stores and the eateries that we frequent, during meetings, at schools, and at work, because no one is free until we are all free. And with that, I'll discuss the fact that Minneapolis is in Hennepin County, and guess what? Hennep is Dutch for hemp. And when we talk about the history that hemp has in our country, we can even discuss geographical names like Hempstead, Long Island, Hempstead County, Arkansas, Hempstead, Texas, Hemp Hill, North Carolina, and Hempfield, Pennsylvania. So in Hennepin County, Minneapolis, revolution is taking place, just as the hemp revolution is taking place across the United States, giving us hope, creating jobs, and stimulating the economy, and helping us find alternative and better ways to make regenerative products and to regenerate our communities. And so today, I'm very happy to be able to deliver to you a fantastic interview with Patrick Atagi, Chairman of the Board of the National Industrial Hemp Council. Patrick is a 3rd-generation specialty crop farmer who has integrated hemp into his rotations. Most importantly, on top of his acumen for agronomy and farming and agricultural scheme in the United States, he is deeply experienced, as is the entire board of the National Industrial Hemp Council. Patrick served as Deputy Director for Intergovernmental Affairs for the United States Department of Agriculture during the George W. Bush administration. He's an experienced executive with a demonstrated history of working in the government relations industry, and he served as legislative assistant under U.S. Senator Mark Hatfield, who was then the chairman of the U.S. Senate Appropriations Committee. Patrick and their board are bringing a whole new perspective and focusing very much on a Checkoff program that we'll go into and educate folks about as this interview unfolds. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Get ready for a great interview, and I hope you have a healthy and inspired week. Remember, use your power. Well, welcome, Patrick. Thank you so much for being with us on Hemp Barons today.
Thank you for having me on board. Very much appreciated, Joy.
Such a pleasure. You know, we're seeing various trade associations pop up with this incredible new opportunity in hemp. And so it's really a breath of fresh air to see the National Industrial Hemp Council with the tremendous amount of agricultural experience, advocacy experience, trade association, and huge industry experience. In fact, you are not only a farmer who is also farming hemp, and a third generation one at that, from what I understand, but also head of government affairs for NWPCA, the National Wooden Pallet Container Association, and a tremendous background. Could you just give us a little bit about your background and then what brought you into hemp, or when hemp got on your radar, Patrick?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I would say, hemp has been on my radar for more than 30 years, to be honest with you. When I was working for my senator, Mark Hatfield from Oregon, back in the early 1990s, and he was chair of the United States Senate Appropriations Committee. And I saw the, language come across my desk of trying to get hemp legalized back then. And as you know, it was an uphill battle, with North Dakota senators putting in the language. And I saw, that come across my desk. So, I've been following with interest for quite a while. I grew up on a family farm out in eastern Oregon, about 50 miles from Boise, Idaho. So I would always say that I'm a farm hand, but not a farmer. I'm always very clear to point that out. I'm a farm owner now through, my family. But when it became legal to grow hemp, there's obviously a great interest. And that's kind of how the NIH, the National Industrial Hemp Council, was formed. There's a lot of interest in the area where I'm from and across the country. So that's kind of the quick background of how we got to where we are. But I've been following it. I've always had a tremendous belief in hemp as a product, and understand the background behind it. But it's just really a phenomenal plant, as you really well know, and singing to the choir. But that's how I got involved, and how the association really got started from the bootstraps up.
I have been, so this is wonderful for me to realize. I don't think, and if when we've spoken before this, I don't think we addressed it, because this is fantastic. 30 years. This plant has been in your field of awareness for 30 years, basically as long as it's been in mine, and many, many industry leaders. I love hearing this and knowing about this. So, because you probably know just as well as I do, that once you get bit by the hemp bug, that's it. It's up in your DNA and you just can't shake it. And clearly you weren't able to shake it. This is a tremendous benefit to the rest of us that you were bit by the hemp bug so very long ago.
No, absolutely. It's a wonderful crop. I guess I come from the farm background, as we need as many arrows in the quiver of our, production that we can. My background and family, we did well with, it sounds funny when I hear about it, when I hear myself say it, but with onions and specialty crops. My background's in that, very much in that field of specialty crops. When you discover a crop, you can make a lot of money on it, but then the farmers around you who might be a little hesitant to enter into the fray look and go, in our case, well, those Japanese American farmers they're doing pretty good raising onions. Then they start raising it, and then the field gets very crowded, and prices drop, and then you get into what else can I grow? And then you're a business owner. You have to decide, what are you going to plant? What are the markets? It's a very challenging, business being a farmer. You have to wear so many hats. So, hemp is another one of those, that popped up, and that we really, as you know, it's a really wonderful, wonderful crop product. Major companies are looking at it, in terms of beyond CBD. I know that's where, the money is, but in terms of fiber, it's just really wonderful, durable, product. So, that's where the National Industrial Hemp Council is really focusing on, is more that long-term vision, which we started, when we formed, that we really need to open up the markets in many, many areas, including CBD and beyond.
Yes, and so grateful for CBD, as I often say, even when you say we're not going to talk about CBD in this seminar or this meeting or this conference, it still takes up all the air in the room, and you still end up talking about it. And so grateful that so many folks are learning about the true promise and potential and on these trillion-dollar industries of oilseed and fiber that hemp serves through CBD. But clearly, you and I came to it from the oilseed and fiber, which again, I can't say it enough, are the true trillion-dollar industries. And before we get too much into it, I really want to highlight some of the just, again, tremendous talent on the NIHC board. Would you mind telling us a little bit about some of your stars? And we could do a whole hour just on your board members, by the way. And but some highlights of that really powerful board that has been put together for the NIHC.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I'll plant a seed, and your head, Joy, and Dan is to bring on John Johnson on for a discussion, because I think there really could be a 45-minute hour discussion with John. John recently joined our board. John recently joined our board of directors. He's with the National Pork Producers Council. He's also the chief financial officer for the pork Checkoff. Ooh. And I've talked with several folks, and this is really a great way to kind of start spreading the message. We're talking, with some other groups about, pursuing a Checkoff program. But for those listeners who aren't familiar with it, if you think about Got Milk, that's a Checkoff program where producers do a self-assessment. Rising tide raises all boats. That money goes into marketing for the industry, for farmers, and for the crop. In the case of milk, for dairy. And that money is collected and goes into for a marketing campaign. So John also has his son is involved in the hemp industry, so he had a real personal interest with the National Industrial Hemp Council, and I've known him for decades. Really phenomenal person, and as you noted, a phenomenal background. And him and one of our vice presidents on marketing and trade, Kevin Latner. He's not on our board, but he's on staff. Really have a good knowledge of the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Checkoff programs. To get a Checkoff program, the steps are fairly easy, but getting it is very complicated because of the makeup of the board and the outreach and the vote to do that. But John, really has a phenomenal background in that. So that's really his strong point, and why he came on board to help shepherd this a Checkoff program, which will take. It takes a while to get it done. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces, but he's put this together before and knows the pitfalls. The makeup of the board. It has to be broad. It's not one association that do this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry to sit there and interrupt. It's just what a contribution. Many, we've all been talking about Checkoff programs, understanding very well, and certainly, as I'm sure you're aware, the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance successfully created a Checkoff up there. Of course, they had 20 years on us. 1998, they federally began to regulate that promising crop with federal crop insurance. So what a contribution that is going to be to these emerging hemp economy, all of the opportunities. Just that's fantastic. I wondered, just because we only recently became aware of it, I guess it was announced in late April, but I just found out about it literally this week, that the Montana hemp growers, and it was announced through the Montana Department of Agriculture, that the Montana hemp growers established a 1% checkoff. I don't know if you were aware of that.
I wasn't aware of that specifically, but I've heard others working on that or doing self-assessment. That's really, really helpful because, that goes towards a national checkoff, hopefully is where we get to. And, with the state departments of agriculture is very important, as I was talking with other folks. The National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, NASDA, I actually worked there for several years. I think it would be a very powerful ally in this, and, seek others to chat with them and and their staff and their CEO about it. We have a few State Department of Agriculture Secretary Commissioners and Directors of Agriculture as members, so that's a path forward that we're looking at. In terms of implementation, they're set up perfectly to administer a Checkoff program. So we're doing some initial conversations, and again, this is everybody needs to be on board. It's not a one person or one organization. It's really has to be a group effort, and that's the complication of a Checkoff, is to get everybody to agree. But I think there's incentive. Yeah, there's incentive though for NAS. I mean, they're a regulator, but they promote farming, but they're also a regulator and regulating agency, and they have the information because a lot of the checkoff work is doing is promotion of the checkoff and letting people know about it. As you noted, you're learning about it, others are learning about it, and it's something that you have to kind of get a grasp of, that it is a self-assessment. Other checkoffs have not, been established you mentioned fiber in the forest and fiber, world. They tried a lumber checkoff, and that didn't go through. But that was a more well-established, long-term, lot of history, between the members, where the big members were, well, why did I pay, marketing for my competitor? And that's just an education of, a rising tide raises all boats in the lumber industry. Now, if they had a checkoff vote, would pass. It didn't pass, I think it was 2 years ago. But now they would, just because of the, logging in China and getting their logs out. So you have to do it right. But I'm planting the seed, with you, Joy, and others, to start thinking about it. It's an 18 to 24-month process. Could be faster, could be longer. It's just a matter of outreach and vote. But you talked about the stars on our board. Another one of those is Undersecretary Bill Hawk, former Undersecretary at U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Marketing Service. So, his knowledge obviously is pretty good, because that program was under him, right?
Just absolutely huge.
Then we have John Johnson. Yeah, absolutely. And we have career levels. So from the top down, we're capable of doing it, but, that's staff directed, association directed. And so, putting the feelers out there, and, those listening, look into a checkoff and see if there's an interest, because at the end of the day, we can get it done in terms of the administrative part of it, but really the industry has to ask for it.
Absolutely. And two things on that. One, as Vice President of Federal Lobbying for the USF Round Table, I want to talk about getting in on that. And hopefully you're working with, or at least are in communication with the U.S. Hemp Growers Association. Yes or no on that, if you're able to say?
Yeah. We have conversations. I chat with Karen periodically. I think we've, she's starting her organization, and we're building ours. But yeah, we talk with each other, and we chat. Yeah, we chat with all the folks. We probably should be better about doing more, to be honest with you, Joy. We're just, we're also focused on trying to get things done that, we need to stop and take time to say hello. But I saw Karen at the Organic Trade Association meeting.
I am acutely aware. It's not like it's a widget. It's not like it's a plant that has one purpose. I mean, where does one start? I recently resigned from board service from the Hemp Industries Association, but there is just a never-ending need, right? I mean, we're talking about human and animal nutrition, body care, nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals, paper, textiles, biocomposites, building materials. I'm going to keep going. Industrial sealants and coatings, supercapacitors, fuel, energy, nanotechnology. Oh my God, stop me. Yes, right. It's hard to come up for air and reach out to each other, but we know how important this checkoff program is, because occasionally, as we're able to stop treading water and just lift our chins up a little bit, we say check off, and then we go back down into the water and keep treading, Right. And on that, Patrick. On that, Patrick, can you tell the listeners the purpose of a checkoff program and what it does? Why a checkoff program?
Well, a checkoff program, first off, it's a generic promotion of the commodity, like milk. You can't say Dairy Gold. You can't say specific names, but it's a very broad, general marketing program to make people aware and to promote the product. The look and feel of cotton, right? USA Cotton. It promotes the product so people are aware. And I think it brings the industry together in a unified voice. And I think, in general, exactly, where's the beef? Absolutely. That was a Wendy's campaign, but a good campaign. But it's paired, right? So we're working, with USDA on international. We're working on two fronts, on an international front and on a domestic front. So the domestic front is the generic, making people aware, and it's not just CBD, right? We talked about that before, and you listed, far more products than I ever could in 5 seconds than I could in 20 minutes. But that's the point of just saying, how wonderful hemp, however that promotion is, and and that is many things, so that we get the product established. And that's my greatest fear, is that it will get a bad name. Something will happen, maybe not even directly, with, CBD. Some people, you could take I've heard of instances where, somebody's taking olive oil and then putting in serotonin to get that effect of, being sleepy, right? So let's say somebody's allergic to serotonin, and this is an example. It's not a real something that's happened, but it's my fear. And then what's going to be the news story, right? It's going to be an attack on CBD, when in fact it had nothing to do with CBD, when hemp has been around, for decades, centuries, as you know. But it's going to be a great news story, right? And then somebody's going to go, oh, you have textiles or fabric or filler in a coat, and somebody's like, oh, I can get high from this. Some sort of, underground, Reddit feed gets out of saying, oh, you can get high from wearing a hemp coat, and that's ludicrous. But in today's world, how something can catch hold and get out there. So, I really think, it just needs to be established as
such as CBD infused masks can help with COVID. Those types of things. I had to. Sorry.
Well, sure. I mean, we'll switch gears a little bit, and we were talking about the board, but folks can come to the National Industrial Hemp Council, hemp-industrial.com, and look at our board makeup. And we may be a new organization, but our depth goes decades, if not centuries, of background in this world in Washington D.C. and at the farmer level. Our folks are farmers, who have farmed and still farm, some of them. So, but let's switch gears. It was interesting you mentioned the CBD and the mask, and I'll start off with saying CBD won't kill COVID. That's not the way it works. But we had an interesting meeting with our task force, our Food and Drug Administration task force. We had a presenter, and it was Jay Noller with Oregon State University's Hemp Innovation Center, International Hemp Innovation Center at Oregon State University.
I literally we just did another podcast interview, and I had to talk about the rock star who is Dr. Jay Noller. I'm such a fan. He's a wonderful man.
Did you talk with him?
No, I will eventually get to. I've helped teach a course on hemp at OSU. I lived in Seattle so I've known Jay for quite some number of years now, and I'm just such a fan. But I've not had him on the show yet, but I certainly will. I want to hear what Jay Noller's story you have to tell.
So this is another hour-long, many hour. This is a series that you need to talk with Jay about. But so in the system, in the human system, and he explains it better than I, is that there's a cannabinoid system in our system. It's actually called that. And one of those pieces,
the endocannabinoid.
Endocannabinoid, thank you. Is that that one of the things it does is our temperature has a control tower, like in an airport, you've got a control tower. And the person in the control tower in our body regulates the temperature and how our body fights disease, viruses, etc. Right? It raises the temperature and helps kill whatever's inside of you. But when under stress, that can go haywire. And again, I'm far oversimplifying, what Jay was talking about. But CBD can help fix that when it goes haywire, right? So it helps us regulate the temperature and can help our body fight disease, not directly, by killing what's in it, but helping our system combat what's ailing us internally. And again, this is a 30,000, 50,000 foot level. Really would really emphasize that you really need to get Jay on and talk about it, because there's been research done. It's just
Yes, well, we just had it. I mean, and Jay is incredible, brilliant. But yes, we literally just did Dr. Yakubis Zaberkas. So the homeostatic regulatory system, homeostasis, absolutely. But you know what's beautiful, Patrick, is that the way you just explained it, though, there are many listeners. They're going to understand it the way you just explained it. So thank you so much for that 30,000 foot view of it, because it's actually quite helpful to have it explained that way to folks. So thank you for that.
Well, Jay and I sat for several hours, and we've gotten to know each other really, really well, because he's in Oregon, and so we obviously run into each other. He actually came out to my hometown. We're having a conference there in Eastern Oregon, but it was that explanation took a while to get to. It was very 30,000 foot level, but I had to understand it because Jay is extremely smart, and he's pretty good at explaining things. But I had to explain this to some of our members, in more layman's terms. So it took a while to get there.
That's sort of the claim to fame, is how on earth am I going to take all of this complexity and deliver it in a way that someone who hasn't spent so much time trying to understand the complexities can understand it in one seminar. And yeah, that's, and as chairman of the board, of the NIHC, I'm sure you're doing plenty of that, brother.
We are.
In a big way.
Attention hemp farmers, introducing Advanced Hemp, the world's first hemp-specific fertilizing system designed to maximize yield and CBD production. Advanced Hemp's team of 25 PhD plant scientists have been researching the plant for over 20 years and understand it better than anyone. Don't fail to meet your hemp's unique needs like far too many farmers did last year. For heavy yield of the high CBD hemp, feed your crop Advanced Hemp. And you can order online at advancedhemp.com. That's advancedhemp.com. But don't wait, because production is limited, so pre-order now.
Going back to the Checkoff program for a minute, again, you ask the question, you already know the answer, but you're aware of what would seem like, even though it's an illogical question when you actually know the answer, but it's a logical question for folks saying, why am I helping my competitor? And as I sort of tee up this question for you, Bob Hoban is one of my favorite, first of all, he's one of my favorite humans and advocates, but certainly one of my favorite lawyers. I was raised by one, so I happen to have a great affinity for lawyers and have worked with them most of my adult life. And he coined the term co-opetition, which hemp is not only delivering on so much of a promise if we can steward this crop correctly in terms of being able to build soil, be such a healer for the biosphere and the planet, and also serve all of these needs of humanity. But it also lends itself to a cooperative business model. Hemp is simply the crop to bring us all together and understand that working smarter, not harder, is the way to go. And a good example of that folks just, I think it passes them by, even though it's so in their face, particularly if you know anything about New York City, a fashion district, a diamond district, a meat district. Sure. So let's talk a little bit more about why it is and why it's natural. It's interesting, in all forms of cannabis, there tends to be this aversion, whereas all the other industries get it, whether it's a magazine industry, whether it's the widget industry, they understand that they're stronger together. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I find that interesting. I'm not sure if I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I would say, I think farmers, the vast majority of farmers, want to work together. I think it's the industry, not the industry, but as it works, it's only been legal for 4 years now, and the background, though, it's like prohibition.
Well, 6
right?
In terms of 2014, where but 4-6 in the big scheme of
6.
things, very new, very new.
Well, 6 years, but that's research and anyway. But I think it's the background of the industry is if you're in hemp more than 6 years ago, you're probably on the illegal side of things, right? And so that's a certain characteristic of a person who would be in that I wouldn't say industry, but in that space, right?
Well, for what it's worth, and just so you know, so many of us have been leaders. I mean, Hemp Traders has been the number one purveyor, right, of hemp textiles and fiber for 25 years, and all I've ever sold was seeds and oil. But I absolutely understand what you are saying when we get these interesting resumes from people who talk about all of their experience cultivating, and you're like, what the heck were you cultivating before 2014? Continue.
Right, right. And so, so I mean, it's a certain personality type of, of our forefathers, of folks who would go out west, and you'd hop in a wagon, and you got no idea what's waiting for you, but you're going to go, so they're very entrepreneur spirit, absolutely, and wonderful people, and but it's also who you trust. So so you build kind of your tribe, so to speak, of who you trust and who you work with, and that's also regional. It's not going to be if somebody's growing, hemp or cannabis or in Oregon, that they're necessarily going to know somebody in Kentucky, right? So I think that's kind of, there's that kind of in the background. But I do think that people get it. And, we had our meeting in Portland, and I think that was kind of a transition phase for many folks who, it was, these guys are the suit and ties. And it was kind of a bit of a derogatory term, and then they came to our meeting and understood, they're the suit and ties. And this is for, whether you liked it or not, is the direction that the industry is going and needs to go. So you can be craft brewing in your, garage, and you love it, and you have your friends, and you might be a Ben and Jerry's ice cream that grows and, becomes a multi-million, dollar company. But, your friends who are churning, butter and ice cream, at home, that's not the direction of where the industry is going, for good or bad, however you want to see it. So, I mean, a long-winded answer to your question is, yeah, there is, but we're all kind of in the same boat together. And I think the argument is, if you want this to succeed and not become ostrich meat and, llama wool, and there is a market for that, don't get me wrong, but it's not mainstream. And hemp really can be mainstream. It has obstacles to get over, as you know, Joy, of, just people look at it. Even our meeting in Portland, Oregon, it was, we were kind of wondering, it was hemp, but like hemp is legal, and they were thinking, it was something else. And so those are the hurdles that we can overcome, with the Checkoff program. And just to let people know is there's still barriers out there. We have a governor in South Dakota that's, not really happy with, the product, right? So I guess that's, again, long answer to your short question of.
No, are you kidding me? We love the long-winded answers, and to get the benefit of your thinking and all of that, it's very, very helpful. Incredibly helpful, in fact, to the listeners, and so that as we all can just really get our head around the emergence of a crop that feeds all of these needs. I mean, delivering on this promise is just it's my purpose. It consumes me, Patrick. And to have folks like you involved, once the 2018 Farm Bill happened, that's it, gloves are off. We need the big guns here to take it all the way home. So really just can't thank you for taking that passion that you were inspired by so many decades ago and running with it. And was it you essentially, whose idea was it, to the extent you could disclose, to form the NIHC? Is this something that you had been thinking about and dreaming about, speaking with some colleagues? Did someone recruit you, or how did that happen?
Oh, no, it was, like hemp and other things, it was just organic. It was, like I said, we had our family farm. We're down to, a couple hundred acres, from a, my father had passed away, and the corporate side of the farm was sold, and so, excuse me, the personal side was sold, and so we had the corporate. But what are you going to do with that kind of acreage in Oregon, which is basically a garden? So obviously, like with everybody else, it's like, oh, you started seeing the numbers: $18,000 an acre, $2,000 input, and 100 acres, 200 acres. It's like, oh, those are some real numbers. And so a lot of our folks in my area were looking at it. My cousin actually works at a CBD processing facility. So, there's already a lot of information. We're just gathering information. And folks in the area were just, asking questions. And I thought, this is an association, right? You're just, it's networking and providing information and sharing information. So, talking with fellow farmers and, folks in the area, we got together and said, you might as well just create an association, because that's what you're doing. And that's really how it formed. And, we had investors, put in to get us started, and, here we are. And it's been a wonderful ride and very interesting. So that's kind of how it all happened.
What a bonus for hemp that you were bit by its bug. That is just fantastic. And one more thing on the Checkoff program, as we come to a close, because it's just so important to the industry, and the fact that NIHC is really taking the lead on that and being like, we're going to do this. The gratitude is really words don't actually express. Can we talk a little bit about Checkoff funds being used for research and that advancing the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Checkoff programs can be used for, education, advancing the industry. There's a lot of research to be done. Again, talking about, we talked about, with Noller and, those folks, that research is being done. And how that normally happens is, it's kind of like people invest in it or just put the hours in and hope to get paid. If we can show, the industry can show, that we need to do that research in the United States, right? It's been done in other countries, but they're just not recognized, as qualified to do it, even though it's good research. So that needs to be done in the U.S. And you've been in those, in Oregon State University and other areas are very well qualified, to do that. The Oregon Health Science University. Really, top notch.
Cornell, obviously Cornell is quite a leader. Colorado State University.
But I should know better. My niece is at Cornell, so I should know better. But yeah, Cornell's wonderful. Would be a fantastic place, to do the research.
They are. I mean, Larry Smart and Jay Noller, they're just two peas in a pod.
Yeah, they are very much so. Very, very great people, and again, Jay's in it, because of the love of the industry and of the crop, very much so. And I just love him to death. But yeah, that could absolutely be used for that. Again, for promotion, but also, we're looking at other programs at USDA, that can be done, used for research. Again, not just, on the CBD front, but, other areas, not necessarily research per se, but, textiles, hemp is, it's a very sturdy fiber, but, on the front end, yes, it's very, environmental and, low energy, low water use. But as on the back end, it requires a little bit more energy intensive work to get it pliable, because it's, it's just like one step below the strength of steel. So it's great, for stability, but, to make it into fabric, it's great, for stability.
We talk about it all the time. As we always say, we love that it's the longest, strongest fiber in the world after it's harvested and processed.
Right, absolutely. So, the Checkoff program can be used for, a lot of things, but, it's research and promotion, programs, as we talked about. But again, I just really want to emphasize, it's not any one organization. NIHC can't do it by itself. It's just, the program's not built that way. It takes everybody, all organizations. So, US Hemp Round Table, Vote Hemp, NIHC, et cetera. It's going to take all organizations, all of us to work together. And, I understand, how things are, and backgrounds and that type of thing. But, this is for the good of the order. So that's the only thing I can say is just, that this is for the good of the order. It's bigger than all of us, and, really is a key piece to making hemp really mainstream. And I think, if you're messaging, it's like, we need to make hemp mainstream. So it doesn't go the way of, a buffalo meat or something to that effect, where, there's a niche market for it, but this could really be a mainstream market, right? I mean, in terms of like cotton, some places we're not even competing with cotton. They talk about, oh, you're competing with cotton, but California, cotton's pretty much left the state because it's too water intensive, where hemp would be a wonderful, wonderful product. Crop to be grown.
Absolutely. And don't get me started on the boll weevil and the fact that the cotton crop takes up over 50% of the world's use of pesticides every year, only to produce for us an inferior short fiber.
Well, I have to be careful. My cotton friends might get on me, but I hear what you're saying, and it's true.
Oh, you're totally right, and I apologize for that. I have a
friend. No, you're okay. No apologies necessary. Not at all. That's why you're so awesome, because you're out there on the front and fighting, and I've just really enjoyed, working with you in the short time we've known each other. It's really refreshing and nice to run into a true believer and advocate.
Well, I can't thank you enough, and I just want you to know, particularly in my capacity with these leadership roles with these wonderful organizations that can support, they have the infrastructure and the funding and the function to support my aggressive agenda and all the passion that I have. And brother, if I can work with you to really get all of us together on this Checkoff program, I just want you to know you can absolutely count on me, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing this discussion, and in the meantime cheering on you and the National Industrial Hemp Council at hemp-industrial.com. Patrick, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm going to look forward to having you back on.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I would look forward to that.
Have a healthy weekend, and we'll talk with you again and moving forward in each other's missions. It's just wonderful. And this John Johnson, I'm coming for John Johnson.
That sounds good. We're actually going to have a call with him next week, so ping me, and we'll get you on the call.
Beautiful. Oh, I would love it. Excellent. Once again, thank you so much, Patrick, and stay healthy.
Yeah, you too. Stay safe, Joy. Take care.
I'm Larry Mishkin. I'd like to invite you to join Jim, Marty, and me on our weekly podcast, The Deadhead Cannabis Show. Each week we explore the latest cannabis and jam band news and reminisce with other cannabis industry deadheads and jam band aficionados about the great musical acts that we've seen and heard. Check out a new episode every Monday at MJBulls.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.